Desert Moon is a 1991 Billboard hit for the Los Angeles hard rock band Great White. It was also the penultimate track for their 5th LP, Hooked, which peaked at number 18 on the Billboard 200 album chart. As such, the song got things off to an exciting start when it was played as the opener to an enthusiastic crowd of fans at the Station nightclub on February 20th, 2003 in West Warwick, Rhode Island. Little did anyone know that Desert Moon will be the last song several people in attendance would ever hear. Just seconds into the song, the show's pyrotechnics were set off by tour manager Daniel Beakley, intending to produce a controlled spray of sparks. However, this ended up igniting acoustic foam surrounding the drummer's alcove. Desert Moon's music video shows flames blazing around the musicians, so fans likely thought the fire was a part of the act. It wasn't until it spread to the ceiling and smoke began to bank down upon the crowd that they realized it was uncontrolled, and for many, it was too late. Great White stopped playing, and lead vocalist Jack Russell said to the crowd, Russell's delivery may not have been as calm had he known that in less than 60 seconds, that entire stage would be engulfed in flames. As the fire alarm blared, the band members and their entourage fled through the west exit. Meanwhile, most of the crowd were headed back to the front door, which they had entered. Many didn't realize there were 2 additional exits available. As such, the front door got completely blocked, resulting in people getting trampled or scurrying to find other exits, but it was too late. The evening ended with 100 deaths, 230 others badly injured, either from burns, crushing, smoke inhalation, or thermal trauma. This left the remaining 132 people, a mere 29% of those in attendance, unharmed, at least physically. The station had allowed a total of 462 people into the nightclub, even though their official licensed capacity was a maximum of 404. The aftermath of this horrific event included Beakley, plus the station nightclub owners, brothers Jeffrey and Michael Derderian, to each be charged with 200 counts of involuntary manslaughter, 2 counts per death because they were charged under 2 separate theories of crime: criminal negligence manslaughter and misdemeanor manslaughter. Beakley pleaded guilty while the brothers pleaded not guilty. All men have since completed their sentences, with Beakley's parole being supported by many of the victims' families, which must have taken an unfathomable amount of forgiveness for actions that, while unintentional, were obviously careless and completely avoidable. 5 months after the fire, Great White started a benefit tour, saying a prayer at the beginning of each concert for the friends and families affected by the incident, with a portion of the proceeds going to the Station Family Fund. While Desert Moon is one of their best known songs, Great White decided not to perform it during the benefit shows, with guitarist Mark Kendall saying that the song is too much of a reminder of that fateful night. 4 years later, Great White resumed performing Desert Moon. However, that doesn't mean the song won't unfortunately have an eternal connection to this tragedy. Folk rock duo The Swell Season played a concert on August 19, 2010 at the Mountain Winery in Saratoga, California to a crowd of 2,000. One of the concert goers was 32-year-old Michael Edward Pickles, who attended the show with a friend. At around 10 p.m., his friend reported that Pickles had left his seat. The Swell Season returned to the stage from an intermission, kicking off their second set with When Your Mind's Made Up. Around this time, some audience members noticed a figure on the rooftop, about 20 to 30 feet above the stage. It was dismissed as a crew member checking the lighting. After finishing the song, The duo went into some playful banter when the figure on the rooftop did a running jump as if he was diving into a pool. The jump, which included a mid-air flip, was ever so quiet that many in the crowd didn't notice anything until a loud thud was produced from the body landing flat just 3 to 5 steps from the band. Given the light mood of the evening, some concert goers didn't immediately grasp the tragedy they had just witnessed, thinking it was possibly a stunt. When singer Glenn Hansard set his guitar down to tend to the fallen man, that light mood immediately changed for everyone in attendance. The event's paramedics attempted to revive Michael Edward Pickles. It was a doctor in the crowd who pronounced him dead at the scene.
We think it's best if we can have you all gather in the plaza. We respectfully ask that you please stay there until further notice so we can get the emergency vehicles out of the venue. Thank you for your cooperation.
8 months prior, on New Year's Day 2010, Pickles had been jailed for threatening to kill his girlfriend and then commit suicide. He had recently been released on $150,000 bail. Despite there being much footage of the event before and after the suicide, there was thought to only be a single video capturing the actual fatal jump. However, out of respect for the victim and his loved ones, the person who recorded the footage has declined to allow anyone apart from the police and the band to view it. I Remember You is a song originally recorded by Jimmy Dorsey, but was introduced to the masses by its appearance in the 1942 film The Fleet's Inn. It reached new heights in popularity when Frank Ifield recorded it in 1962, and it shot to #1 on the UK singles chart, selling over 1 million copies. The Beatles were even known to cover I Remember You at some of their early concerts. However, many wouldn't think of I Remember You as a Bjork song, unless you're familiar with the case of Ricardo Lopez, colloquially known as the Bjork stalker. Lopez had a poor self-esteem and was a social recluse. While he claimed he didn't want Bjork as a lover, he was obsessed with influencing her life in some way, much like how he perceived she had influenced his. Lopez wrote in his diary that he couldn't have sex with her because he loved her, and instead fantasized about inventing a time machine to travel back to the 1970s so that he could befriend her when she was a child. However, Lopez grew particularly angry over finding out through reading an issue of Entertainment Weekly that Bjork was romantically involved with darkcore and electronic musician Goldie. Over Lopez's final 9 months of life, he made video entries which captured nearly 22 hours of his fixation with Bjork, as well as other events in his Hollywood, Florida apartment, from a sad day-to-day life to even his death. Having felt betrayed by Bjork for her relationship with Goldie, Lopez took steps to punish her. Similar to how he wanted to build a time machine, Lopez fantasized about constructing a bomb filled with hypodermic needles containing HIV-tainted blood, which was intended to infect Bjork with the virus, an act which would satisfy his desire to have that lasting effect on her life he was so eager to have. Lopez eventually realized this was unfeasible, so he settled on successfully constructing a letter bomb of sulfuric acid hidden in a hollowed-out book, which would explode and either disfigure or kill Bjork when she opened it. On the morning of September 12, 1996, Lopez's final video would be recorded. It started off with him preparing to go to the post office to mail the letter bomb. After doing so, he returned to his apartment and resumed filming. Lopez shaved his head and painted his face red and green. He positioned the camera to ensure an image of Bjork was in frame, as well as a hand-painted sign that read, "The Best of Me," placed directly behind him. Over his hyperventilating and deep panting, as if he was drowning out of water, Bjork's rendition of I Remember You could be heard in the background. As the song finishes playing, Lopez shouts what's believed to either be "This is for you" or "Victory," then quickly positions the barrel of a revolver into his mouth. He immediately pulls the trigger, resulting in his body swiftly collapsing to the floor. police would eventually discover his body 4 days later, as well as his writings and videos. Thanks to Lopez's copious documentation, he unwittingly helped police intercept the package that was en route. Had Lopez not been so detailed with his plans, that package could have successfully arrived at its destination. However, the address it was delivered to was Bjork's management office, meaning that it would have been an employee tasked with going through her mail who would have been disfigured or killed. Ironically, Bjork and Goldie had broken up a few days before Lopez's suicide, which makes you wonder if he still would have sent the bomb and committed suicide had he known. Even though it took an attempt on her life, Ricardo Lopez got Bjork to remember him.
I remember you. You're the one that made my...
This topic was originally covered in a segment of my video on the mysterious music iceberg. It's based around a post that Redditor Raspberry144MBS made to Lost Wave, a subreddit dedicated to posting and investigating music of an unknown origin. While the post had been available for several years, Raspberry unfortunately deleted it just weeks prior to the Iceberg video's premiere. Even though I missed the opportunity to capture any screenshots of Raspberry's post, I at least had the foresight to take detailed notes during my research. Raspberry had been going through an old laptop from his father, who had died in a drunk driving accident. On this laptop was a gore video that contained an unidentified song that Raspberry was eager to locate. The video file had last been modified on April 28, 2005, so we can assume the song, if it was ever officially released and not some homemade recording, was created sometime before 2005. There's something that sounds like bit rot as well as some other noise which makes the song difficult to clearly interpret. We may never find out, but whatever it was likely the victim's last song they ever heard. Like in the Iceberg video, I'm going to refrain from playing the audio since some of the sounds you'd hear are likely the acts of violence. But I'll put the Vocaroo.com path in the description for those of you who want to try to identify the song or are just morbidly curious. However, as this here video that you're currently watching will indicate to you, it's not uncommon for mainstream music to appear in the background of gore videos. Murderers do this to drown out the sounds of their crime occurring, or they just want something to listen to while they inflict atrocious acts upon someone. Point being, this doesn't have to be some long-lost, mysterious song. It could be as easily identifiable as some of the songs in this next entry. I apologize in advance if this next segment comes across as gratuitous. The reason for the graphic description is to discourage you from seeking out this case any further than what's been presented here, since even a censored screenshot from the video in question would be removed from YouTube. Honestly, I couldn't bring myself to watch the video in question, but instead gathered details from those who did have the stomach for it. So, if you have seen it and noticed any inaccuracies, please feel free to share your feedback in the comments below. Lastly, I understand this video is a lot darker than my usual content, but I'm just keeping an open mind and trying new things out. So, if you're interested in more content of the strange and disturbing, please be sure to like, subscribe, ring the bell, and share. Thanks as always for watching. Funky Town Gore is the title of a shock video that surfaced on the web in 2016, with many witnessing it on Twitter. It depicts the grotesque torture of a bound and faceless man. All the while, Sweet Child of Mine by Guns N' Roses and then Funky Town by Lips Inc. plays in the background. Unfortunately, not much is known about the video's origin, such as who the victim was, what he did to be treated so cruelly, though no justification is possible, and who his murderers are. There are claims that Funky Town Gore was recorded somewhere in South America. However, accents from what little dialogue can be heard over the pleas and cries pinpoint Mexico as the likely source. Sadly, there is other content out there like this, and a lot of it is created by drug cartels for the purpose of intimidating civilians, law enforcement, and rival gangs. The setting of this traumatizing event takes place on a ceramic tiled floor, possibly in an industrial kitchen of either a club, restaurant, or even a prison, perhaps during a riot. The victim has been bound by the arms with plastic wire, since his hands have been cut off. He literally looks like a skull, eyes gouged out, the skin of his face having been flayed. You can see his breathing through the permanent smile of a skeleton. The human body isn't meant to endure this kind of pain. It's designed to go into shock or simply expire. But this victim's 5 to 6 murderers had taken steps to ensure he stayed alive and very much aware. An IV line is visible by his throat, pumping him full of adrenaline to maintain his consciousness. As such, the victim is strong enough to attempt to fight back. The victim's nubby wrists raise as he feels at his skinned face with his phantom hands. Rumor has it that he was eventually decapitated, which the video doesn't show, but it does capture his throat being repeatedly slit with a box cutter. Over the victim's screams and gurgles, the perpetrators can be heard laughing, taking pleasure in the pain they're inflicting. One of them can even be heard whistling along to Funky Town. On Saturday, December 6, 1969, a crowd of over 300,000 attended the Altamont Speedway Free Festival, a counterculture rock concert right outside of Livermore, California. The festival opened with Santana, which went fine. But the crowd eventually became so rowdy throughout the performances of Jefferson Airplane and the Flying Burrito Brothers that by the time Crosby, Stills, Nash & Young took the stage, Stephen Stills was repeatedly stabbed in the leg with a sharpened bicycle spoke by a stoned-out member of the outlaw motorcycle club, the Hells Angels. The reason for the presence of the Hells Angels varies. Some sources say they were hired to do security for $500 worth of beer, while other accounts suggest that they were hired to guard against anyone from tampering with the generators. Regardless, by the time the Rolling Stones took the stage, the crowd became so antagonistic towards the Hells Angels for being treated so aggressively that they attacked the biker gang. Things got so carried away that the crowd turned on each other, and even some of the performers besides Stills were assaulted. Most notably, the Rolling Stones frontman himself, Mick Jagger, who had been punched in the head within seconds of emerging from his helicopter. It was concert-goer Meredith Hunter, however, whose life would be ended because of the crowd's violence. It's a common misconception that Sympathy for the Devil was the song being played during Hunter's death, which is the result of misinformation reported by early articles on the occurrence. The song that Hunter actually died to was Under My Thumb. By the time the Stones were on stage, the Hells Angels had already become so intoxicated that many of them were hurling full cans of beer and striking concertgoers with motorcycle chains. Things got so ugly while the Stones were playing that by their third song in, Sympathy for the Devil, they had to stop and restart. They continued their set without much incident until their 7th song, Under My Thumb. At this point, Hunter climbed on a speaker box, causing 2 Hells Angels to get into a scuffle with him, concluding with Hunter disappearing into the crowd. However, just seconds later, Hunter angrily re-emerged, drawing what appears to be a long-barreled blue steel .22 caliber revolver from his jacket. Footage from the documentary Gimme Shelter shows what might be an orange flash, indicating Hunter fired the gun. Hells Angel Alan Passero drew a knife from his belt, ran at Hunter from the side, parried the gun with his left hand, and stabbed Hunter with his right. Witnesses also reported that Hunter was stomped on by several Hells Angels while he was on the ground. The gun was recovered and turned over to police, Pesaro was arrested and tried for murder in the summer of 1971, but was acquitted after a jury viewed concert footage determining that Pesaro acted in self-defense in response to Hunter brandishing the revolver. There are rumors that a second assailant helped Pesaro inflict the fatal wounds that resulted in Hunter's death. As such, the case had remained opened until 2005, at which point it was finally closed, dismissing the theory that a second Hell's Angel took part in the stabbing. In the interim of Pesaro's trial in 1971 and the case closure in 2005, he had drowned in Anderson Lake. While no foul play was ever confirmed, police did initially report that the death was considered suspicious. Maybe payback for Hunter's death? Or silencing his knowledge of an additional assailant, or perhaps it was nothing at all and Pesaro died of a genuine accidental drowning. We'll probably never know for sure, but if one thing is for certain, whether it's prior to or during death, there will be a final song all of us will hear.